Hi there, this is our week 10 help video, and there are a few things that I know students are struggling with this week. One is the direct object pronouns and the a personal. Another is some of the listening activities, and then another is the stem changing verbs. So I posted an announcement with some ideas to help with trouble that people might be having with listening. And so check those ideas and see if that is helpful. And then I also included the script for a couple of the My Spanish Lab assignments in that announcement, for a couple of the My Spanish Lab assignments that are the students are having a hard time understanding what the questions are because of the listening. So check out that announcement if those are the things that you've been having trouble with. And then if you still feel like you're not understanding the direct object pronouns and the a personal lesson, let me know, and I'll create another video, or we'll do a phone call or something like that to help you out with that. So, but what I really wanted to focus on for my help video this week is the stem changing verbs, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how those work and a tool that we have here in Blackboard to help with that. So if you go to course documents, that's the area that I'm in, and I'm sorry, for some reason this browser is not liking OneDrive today, so it keeps switching. But there's an Excel spreadsheet here that for the stem changing verbs, and I'm going to switch over to that. I already downloaded it and opened it. So it opens up as an Excel spreadsheet, and I know that's not necessarily the most user-friendly always, but I think it works well for this particular spreadsheet, or this particular resource. So if you would like, you can fill it out in Excel, or you can print it and fill it out by hand. I actually recommend doing that because, for one, if you aren't familiar with Excel, it might be easier. And then also, a lot of times doing something, actually handwriting something, will trigger your memory in a different way than typing it does. You can use color coding and different colored ink if that's helpful. Use one for the stem and another color for the ending, that kind of thing. There's ways that you can trigger your memory in a better way when you're handwriting something. So first I want to show you, if you are going to fill it out on the computer, try, if this is a little overwhelming with all of the different columns and rows, go up here to View and then click on Page Layout, and that view is a little bit more, it's more like what you would see if you were to print it out, and so it's a little less overwhelming sometimes. Okay, so here is our sheet, and what I have is I've divided the stem changing verbs, and this isn't an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination, but it does include a lot of the stem changing verbs that are in our textbook. So, and I grouped them according to the type of stem change they have. So first is E to IE, and then within that category I grouped them by AR verbs, ER verbs, IR verbs, and then some with special cases, some that have a special note. In this case, tener and venir have a G in the yo form instead of the other stem change. And then despertarse and sentarse are reflexive verbs. I would recommend skipping that for now and doing the skipping the reflexive verbs for now and coming back to them in the next chapter when we learn about reflexive verbs, and add those in the next chapter. Next section is O to UE. Again, AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs, and then special cases, and then the E to I stem change. And with the E to I stem change, there are only IR verbs, so that's why you don't see any AR or ER verbs with that stem change. So going back up to the top, if we look at the way this is organized for each verb, you have a space for the yo conjugation, the tú conjugation, él, ella, usted, nosotros, vosotros, and ellos, ellas, ustedes. Now you'll notice that nosotros and vosotros are shaded. The reason that those columns are shaded is, of course, just a memory signal to you to remember that those forms do not change. There's no stem change in those forms. All right? So if we were to conjugate these, of course, we remember that pensar has the E to IE stem change. So we identify where the stem is of that verb. Sorry about that. The stem of that verb is the PENS, The ending is AR. Now, we've already learned the endings, and those are not going to change. Those are going to follow the pattern that you've already learned. So for an AR verb, it's the o, as, a, amos, ais, an endings. So one thing that you can do if you're really struggling with these stem changing verbs is you can go through and just do the stem change. Actually, you could just do the stem first. So let's start with the nosotros and vosotros, since those we know don't change. And we add that stem. And then we say, okay, how is this going to change? We're going to add that I to the other stems. Okay, so I'm going to go through and I'm just going to type that. Okay, and again, if you were writing this, you could write all of this in one color and then come back and write the stem or the endings in a different color if you wanted. Okay, so we have all of our stems identified. Now I'm going to go through and add the endings. Okay, and with Excel, I have to click up into this to add to type in that. So I'm going to add o, as, a, amos, ais, and an. Okay, so now they're all conjugated. Another way that you can do this is look at one of the conjugation websites and just go through and just fill it out so you have it for reference. So depending on whether you're using this tool to create a reference for yourself or just for practice, will depend on whether you want to use something like a conjugation website or just go through and conjugate them yourself. Okay, so let's do one more as an example. We'll go down here to almorzar, which is an O to UE stem change. If we start with just the stems, we'll add in these that we know don't change. Okay, then we're going to identify and say, okay, the O is going to change to UE, so I'm going to add the rest of the stems. And breaking it all apart like this is not the most helpful way to learn how to use these fluently in conversation. So this particular practice is really just limited to when you're trying to kind of wrap your brain around what is happening with these verbs and get used to these patterns. All right, so I wouldn't recommend that you do this all the time, but if you're just trying to get used to these patterns, this can be helpful to you. Okay. So again, remember the endings that you've learned: the o, as, a, amos, ais, an, o, es, e, emos, eis, en, o, es, e, imos, is, en. Those are going to stay the same. Those follow the patterns that you've already learned. So don't throw out what you've learned already about verb conjugation as you learn these stem changing verbs. I'm going to show you one more thing. Let's see how we're doing for time. We're at 8 minutes. So I want to show you one more thing really quickly. If we go back to that verb chart that we used early on for learning regular verbs, we can use this as well. And let's go ahead and we'll just do almorzar again. Okay. And you'll see here, I'm going to add these conjugations again. Almuerzo, almuerzas, almuerza. This is one that doesn't change. Almorzamos, vosotros, almorzáis, and ellos, ustedes, almuerzan. Almuerzan. Okay, the reason that I wanted to show you this is because if we were to color or somehow distinguish these, if we were to somehow set apart these that don't have a stem change, if you studied Spanish in high school, you may have heard stem changing verbs referred to as a boot verb, and it's because if you organize it like this, the ones that have the conjugations that have a stem change kind of resemble a boot. So if you're a visual learner, using these instead of the Excel spreadsheet list version may actually be more beneficial to you because you have that visual reminder of the boot that leaves out those two that do not have the stem change. So whichever of these tools is the most useful to you, go ahead and use it. But again, like I said earlier, I do recommend printing it off and filling it out by hand, at least for a few of these verbs, just to help with activating your memory for the stem changing verbs and those patterns that they follow. So I hope this was helpful, and if you are struggling with the stem changing verbs still, or with anything else in the week 10 content, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I will see you all online.